Ba-da-ba-ba-ba, transfer talk. So Matt, we'll also bring a little bit of the Arsenal piece in here, and your thoughts on who you'd like to see in the lineup or who you wouldn't. Aubameyang, I mean, the big question to Matt is, do you reckon you're going to keep him?
This is what I was going to say.
It's a big loss.
Yeah. So Aubameyang, on the Aubameyang front, if Aubameyang goes, we are a mid-table team. We're a mid-table team with.
Can we get that as a highlight, please? Just sort of Matt stating that.
I'll happily say
mid-table team with Willian, maybe.
Well, he'd walk in our team. That shows you the gap between you guys and us. Is that it panned to him in the bench, and I was like, he could do a job. Yeah.
Defensively,
I think he'll stay. That's my gut feeling.
I think he will as well. I mean, he's not. I think he's for a big club to come in for him. He's not young. It'd be different if he was 28, 29. But is he 31 now?
31.
I mean, don't get me wrong. He's still playing at the peak of his game, but I think he's only got 2 or 3 good years in him.
Yeah.
Unless he goes to Italy, which just seems to breed players who into their sort of late 40s and just being able to sort of continue at that peak. But for me, I just don't see him going to a bigger club. No one really is going to pay big money for him.
I mean, we were linked with him, weren't we? Apparently, it's come out over last week. I think that he was ready to move to Chelsea in January, but Chelsea didn't want to match didn't want to pay his wages. So he was literally all ready to go. It was just a case of we didn't want to pay the wages, so it got called off.
That's so funny. Chelsea not wanting to match an Arsenal player's wages is really but if he'd gone to United, I thought he was going to go to United in January. That was my thing, because they needed a striker. I know their front three has turned up with a decent tally, but towards the end of the season, they start banging in goals that don't matter. And then you look back and go, hang on a minute, we've been slagging them off all year and now they've got double figures, all of them. That's when they were linked in January, no one was really firing all cylinders. Martial, what's it called?
Greenwood, Rashford.
Greenwood and Rashford, right? They weren't firing all cylinders. So I thought if Aubameyang goes there for a couple of years to buy them enough time for any of them to step up or for them to sign Harry Kane, that would probably be my play. So when he didn't go, I was delighted. But I think he'd do a job for you. I think if he went in.
Well, now we've got Werner coming in. I think it's not needed as much.
We're probably okay.
The thing is, I'm less worried around our sort of attacking front now. What worries me is our defence, because I think that was probably going to be the focus of the FA Cup, was how poor can each Arsenal or Chelsea's defence be, because we have been horrific in recent games. I mean, we've only sort of turned up for a few of our games and done a half decent job. I'd never sort of give us sort of the credit of being great, but the back three, because we've played with a back five for the last 3-4 games now, and the back three have always been shaky. You've put Dave into that gives it a bit more solidified, but Zuma and Rudiger just don't seem to be a good defence, and I think you guys have had the same challenge. I think sort of Arsenal have had that challenge of from a defence for a number of seasons now. So I won't necessarily ask your opinion on how we fix it, because I think you're still looking for the answer. But I think the issue being is both Chelsea and Arsenal are going to be in the market for defensive sort of bolstering that defence, for want of a better word. And I don't really know. It's a saturated market at the moment. Sort of a couple of seasons ago, you could have bought a centre-back for as cheap as chips, and now it's probably the most pivotal part of the game. I think sort of that Van Dijk effect, where people have seen the money that you have to spend to get that level of quality, and then recognise that there's not a lot of that quality left. So I think it's going to be capturing the scraps to sort of go through that. Is that an area that you sort of identified as trying to fix, or is that?
I don't think ours, if you look at it without emotion, is actually down to the individuals. I don't think they make individual errors, but I don't think that we could take a defender out, stick one in, and we would be much better. Other than like a Van Dijk or someone that would be levels above. And I think the problem is we have moved to a completely new system where the midfielders and the defence have been just disjointed, and the way that Arteta's trying to play for us is very much, if you're not in your position and you're not part of these triangles and part of this press, then when you look up and someone's not there, we are absolutely exposed. And I think the adjustment period for that is the reason why people have made individual mistakes, rather than David Luiz is an absolute idiot, which he is, but I don't think that's the whole reason for why he's made these mistakes. So the short answer is, I don't think we can sign our way out of our problems. It get made better by having someone big come in, but we can't attract them. Who wants to be in our defence at the moment and play in the Europa League?
I've seen you've signed a defender, Saliba, is it?
Yeah, last year.
Yeah, he looks quite good actually. So I think, I don't know how quick of an impact he'll be able to speak because he's very young, but from what I've seen of him, he does look quite impressive.
He's 19, so you're like, he's probably very good. And I've seen, to be honest, I YouTubed Yaya Sanogo and thought he was going to be, amazing. But I thought, how much can we pin our hopes on a 19-year-old when he's next to Holding, I think it's 23, 24, and David Luiz, who's like 86. So that's my worry. But yeah, he looks good.
So I think we've got a similar issue in terms of, like, if you look at all of our defenders on their own, they're good players. Rudiger is a good player. Looking at him as a sole individual, Christiansen, Zuma, and Tomori, they're all good defenders, but we're just missing a certain attribute, which is a physical, strong, powerful leader type. Someone that can communicate well. We're missing the John Terry of our team, basically. Yeah. And that's where we need to go and strengthen. We need to go and pick up someone who is, more than anything, the communication side of it, because you can see it when we have corners against us. There's just no communication whatsoever, and people can run around. I mean, you guys had clearly seen how poor our defence was from corners, because you had a specific routine from corners that you were doing, and every time it was over the keeper's head and towards the back post, because you knew that everyone just turns around and looks and doesn't actually do anything. And that all comes down to the communication side of it, and I think that's where we need to go and strengthen. Just get someone who can actually lead that defence and order people about and make sure people are in the right place at the right time and know what they're doing. That's not an easy find, especially in this market.
Don't you think that there are more I say individual errors because that's what they go down as, but there seem to be more individual errors now than when we were growing up watching football. I just don't remember this many glaring errors. And I think players are getting asked to do too much. There's like a generational gap where probably the ones that are at 19 now will be used to being told, in this scenario you do this, in this scenario you press, in this scenario you fall back. But there's a whole generation that's currently playing that are not used to that. They're just, you're in a 4-4-2, you stay back. That's it.
It's the turnover of managers, isn't it? It's every team has it now. You guys had Wenger for such a long time, and now you're going through similar thing to everyone else, where you've changed managers quite quickly recently, and everyone's having the same. A manager's really, you don't see them lasting more than 4 or 5 years maximum. And that's a manager. And most of the time, you got probably a 2-season limit on most managers, 2-3 seasons. If you're changing ideas and philosophies every couple of years, players are not, they're going to get confused. You have to play this way now. Next year, you have to play that way. And it's not easy for a player just to change their mentality completely like that as a player and change their playing style to suit what that manager wants. And the manager can't always bring in a whole team of players to suit his philosophy straight away. He has to put sometimes a few square pegs in round holes, and it doesn't always work. And that's where you get these individual errors from. And it is difficult because of this manager merry-go-round that the whole world seems to have now.
I think from my perspective, it's a bit of a Guardiola effect, where they're expecting all 11 players on the pitch to have that sort of total football, being able to sort of play out from the back, being able to sort of just play that passing football. I think back when we first started watching football, it was the likes of Terry, Tony Adams, that sort of no-nonsense back four. That back four is literally clear it as quickly as you can and hoof it up the field and let the midfielders and the strikers do the fancy player work. there's an expectation now for the top clubs that everyone, including the keeper, has the ability to pass around the game, and you're passing that back sort of from the back to the front. And there's a lot of players who can't do that. You saw Joe Hart, literally his whole career has crumbled by trying to fit into that methodology. Can't even get into a Burnley squad where he was Man City keeper for a number of years. And I think there's a lot of managers who are trying to play that ethos without having the players ready for it. Sort of Frank can't expect Rudiger, Zuma, Christensen to be able to do the simple stuff right, and then equally be able to sort of make sure they can pass from the back four to the front. It's taken City and Liverpool a number of years to get to that point to be able to do that, and I think there's just people are struggling to try and keep up with. They're so far ahead of the pack at the moment. It's going to be difficult to try and catch up with mediocre defence.
Also, as well, it's like the shift Guardiola again, right? The shift where the final third, the attackers in the front three, by the way, a very modern thing, right, in terms of how it's used now, that they are allowed to do what they want in the last third. That was always the methodology. And no matter what you tell your striker to do, so long as he bangs one in last minute, 30 yards away, he's a hero. So if he's not listened to any instructions all game, has had a stinker, hasn't tracked back, but scores a winner, all the fans will love him and not notice anything else he's done. For the defenders, there is absolutely no way to redeem you not being part of the system. There is no way to, unless you clear the ball off the line, which is most of the time luck anyway, there is no way for you to get that back. And I think that's why the defenders get such a hard time trying to adapt versus the attackers, because people are scoring more goals. And it's a mixture of attacking is a little bit easier when you've got total freedom, and defenders are having to be more constrained.
And equally, I think it's creating a bit of a paradigm between the top 6 or 7 and the bottom half of the table, because you look at the likes of Burnley and a number of other clubs where they are still playing that level of football and they're winning games against the big clubs. They're sort of, you're seeing the Burnleys beat Chelsea, the Arsenals. It's because they're just doing simple stuff right, and we're just trying to overcomplicate it quite often. And therefore you see sort of the big clubs lose to sort of the minnows. But then when you're playing the same mentality against sort of Chelsea and Arsenal, you get a much sort of normal scoring game, sort of the 1 or 2 nils. Whereas when you're playing a Burnley and they're literally their back four know what they're doing and they just hoof it route one to their strikers, it's very simple to sort of score a goal against defenders who don't know the system they're trying to be part of. So we'll see how that goes. So obviously we've got some confirmed areas where it seems all but certain Kai Havertz is on his way over to Chelsea. Petr Cech all but confirmed it. You know, a Twitter post where he asks, "Are we getting Kai Havertz?" And there was no confirmation or denial. But as we mentioned last week, it's just looking positive. So Kai Havertz,
I think it's probably a case now of do we do it before or after the Europa League, because obviously he's due to play in the Europa League next week against Rangers. Now we saw what can happen yesterday when Pedro got injured. He's obviously got his move lined up to Roma, so obviously we don't want that to happen. So it kind of looks like they're saying to us, if you want him before, you have to pay full price, but if we keep him for the Europa League, then maybe we'll negotiate on the price a little bit. So I don't know, it's whether it's worth it or not to just pull the trigger now and make sure he doesn't play, or to let him play and maybe knock 10, 15 million off the price. I don't know. It's
all but certain we're going to go in for him. He might play against Rangers to be honest, get match fitness in this current scenario we're in. You can't really knock, because otherwise you're going to have players just sitting around waiting for the pre-season or whatever pre-season looks like. Probably also to give the Bayer Leverkusen fans an opportunity to say goodbye. I probably wouldn't deny it, and I wouldn't mind taking the risk. I feel absolutely gutted for Pedro after yesterday, but I would rather risk it, because if he's going to get injured, he's going to get injured. I'd rather that happens before he comes to Chelsea rather than whilst he's here. That's my thoughts. So, Matt, if we talk around the hypothetical here, so Chelsea's potential attack lineup next year could be a lineup of Pulisic, Ziyech, Werner, potentially Kai Havertz, and then you've got some of the existing players like Tammy, Giroud, Mason Mount. Dependent on contract renegotiation, could potentially have Willian in that mix as well.
Hudson-Odoi.
What are your thoughts around that? Because as a Chelsea fan, it's quite an impressive front line.
No, it is, but it's how you fit. How do you fit them all in and not lose? I mean, my gut feeling of Hudson-Odoi is he won't leave because these people have come in. But does he go out on loan? Does he become a squad player? Does he become a Carabao Cup player? Do all four of them fit in the same team? Giroud has proven he absolutely just loves being a squad player anyway and trying to prove people wrong, so he'll stay forever. And it wouldn't matter to you guys if you left anyway, other than calendar sales. And I think that the front, it's a scary attack. It is a scary attack. And we would take anyone who left from that. So we'd take Willian. Right? I know some Arsenal fans don't want him, but he'd walk into our team. Even if it was just to challenge Pepe. So yeah, no, scary front four potentially. But where would you have Havertz? Would you have Havertz? Is he going to be your 10?
Well, the thing is,
he plays Cam and to the right? So
yeah. So the way that Lampard seems to like to play, and it all depends on Kante really, because if you don't have Kante, you can't really play this way. But we play with a 4-3-3 with Kante at the base, and then two kind of number 8s.
Right.
So my thought is that it will be Mount and Havertz as the two number 8s, and then you'll have Pulisic wide left, Ziyech wide right, and Werner up front.
Where do you play Kovacic then, Jamie? Because he deserves a position in the squad.
He'll be a squad player next season. I'm telling you now, he'll be a squad player next season. It'll be him and Mount will be rotated in that position.
Yeah.
Kante has to stay, and I think we'll probably try and, if we get Declan Rice in, he'll cover for a centre back, and he'll also be cover for Kante in that role, because he could do the same kind of job, not in the same way as Kante, obviously, but he can do that kind of job. And yeah, I don't think Kovacic will be a regular starter next season.
Yeah, personally. I mean, I think sort of the struggle. I think sort of there's been a lot of talk this week, and I think Darren Bent is on TalkSport talking around it. Is everyone's been giving Lampard the plaudits around how much he's brought through youth into the squad. So bringing through Tammy, Tamori, Mount, Abraham, Hudson-Odoi. And then there's been that challenge now is, has he just brought them through because he's had to bring them through, rather than the real challenge is now he's got money and spending money, will he still put those sorts of players into the squad? And I think some of them will keep that position. I think to your point, Matt, of why didn't Abraham start, he has lost his confidence as soon as we've announced Werner. There's no doubt about it. He hasn't started, and Giroud started every game.
And Giroud's form has been ridiculous. You couldn't really drop him after, he's scored in almost every game since the restart, so you couldn't really drop him at all.
I think you'll see Abraham potentially exit this season. I think I can't really see him. He's been sort of holding out for this contract, which, to be fair, I would have he should have signed in January, just to sort of get the long-term contract when he was in form. His form has dropped off the chart, and now there's so much talent that's been brought around him. I don't think he's got the same.
I think he'll be there to push Werner for a starting space. Obviously, Werner looks like he'll be, as Max would say, written into the team every week. But I think he'll be there to pressure him for that spot. And I do think, he'll get an odd start against your promoted teams, or, he'll get starts here and there to give him a chance to earn his spot. And that's what he needs, I think. Like if you can't handle the pressure of big players coming into your team, then don't play for a big club, because it's always going to happen. They're always going to have people there that can challenge you for that spot. And we're arguing about where we're gonna fit all these top players. It's a brilliant problem to have. And when you're at a top club, you have to expect that. You can't think that just because a top club signed you, you're going to get into the team every week. You have to fight for your place. You have to earn your place, and it's going to be the same no matter which big club any of our players go to. It'd be exactly the same.
And probably Matt will have seen this season, and whether it will change in the next season is we're going to buy a lot of talent in that might not fit on day one. So we've seen this as of old. Potentially a Werner or Kai Havertz is not going to have the greatest sort of run off the blocks. They're not going to be sort of hit the ground running and scoring what we're expecting them to do. My gut is that you're going to see one or two of them have an absolute outstanding season next season. Arsenal come in, spent circa 70 million on Pepe this season. He hasn't lit the world on fire. So there's the risk that you, as much as we've got this talent in the youth coming through, that they're probably going to see it at the mainstay, because you're not going to be able to go and have Werner scoring 30 goals in the first season, or Kai Havertz doing something similar. Is that where it's an interesting point on Pepe, Matt, because he was meant to be your saviour this season, and he's not necessarily delivered. He's had moments of genius.
Yeah, I think he's a victim of how we've tried to play. And it's so obvious what he's going to do. He's like Robin Mark II or Ribery Mark II, where it's like, he's going to cut in, he's going to cross, or he's going to cut in, he's going to shoot. There is nothing else to his game. And if no one to cross to, he's going to shoot. And we're not overloading the box. We're not a fast counter-attacking team. So he's looking up, and there's no one to take defenders away for him to kind of cut in. There's no one to do anything with him. Every time he's had the ball, he's on his own. And I do feel for him in that regard. Having said that, the way he dribbles is so irritating. He doesn't look like the ball.
I think he'll fit into your team because obviously Arteta's coming in with this kind of this Pep style of play that he's used to, and that to me sounds very much like what Mahrez does for City. He cuts inside, and I think Mahrez has scored against us that way about 5 times for Leicester and City.
Yeah.
Taking someone on wide right, cutting inside and burying it into the bottom corner. So I think, if Arteta gets you playing the way that he wants you to, then I think Pepe could definitely excel in that team long term.
Yeah, if I was going to sign a player though, Aubameyang's going to be the biggest signing we make, and if we do, and if we don't make it, we are. I don't care who we sign, because it's going to be just a disastrous season anyway. The main signings I want to make, I want another centre back, and I want someone in midfield that is just a proper out and out holding midfielder. That's all I want there, because we still don't have one.
Think you'll keep Ceballos?
I want to keep Ceballos, and I don't think he's good enough to get the Real Madrid team, which is sad and good at the same time. Because he's not going to walk into Real Madrid's team, is he? And he's not going to be happy being a squad player. So I can't see us not keeping him. I would not have kept David Luiz for another year. That is insane to me. I understand that.
He is the most temperamental player I've ever seen. A player that can win you a game and lose you a game in 2 separate games is just unreal. It raises a good point. So if we look at where Chelsea probably need to invest the majority of our remaining transfer funds, is defensively. So if we look at the elephant in the room of our goalkeeper situation, 72 million on a failed goalkeeper.
Matt, can you give us one of yours, please? Because you've got 2 good goalkeepers there.
Yeah. No, yeah, you can have. I don't know which one I'd give you, to be honest. They've both been pretty decent.
They've both been good, yeah.
Yeah.
I was really shocked. When Bernd Leno went out, Martinez was literally just this unknown figure and has come in and done an amazing job. We've not had that privilege. we know that Willie can do a role, but he's not a top 4 goalkeeper. And that's where we're going to have to go and get our checkbook out and either spend big or spend still big, but not as much.
Sensibly.
the names being bounded around at the moment. So the one that myself and Jamie would love to see is Oblak. That's going to be circa £100 million to sort of bring a player of that class through. And equally, I think, as much as I think Oblak would be an amazing player, I just don't think I see it happen. I don't see us being able to spend that money, be able to bring through that level of quality, and it just be able to work in this transfer. That's just not.
Who else is there? I don't know who else.
So the one that's being touted at the moment is Pope. So Pope for 50 million is what I'm reading at the moment, and that's a big pill to swallow for a player that's had a few good seasons. The issue is that someone like Pope has got Premier League experience and can walk in and do a job. Now, we've spoken on the podcast before, but what Chelsea need is not a sort of they don't need a player that's a ball-playing goalkeeper. We don't need that. It's a failed experiment that we've had. We just need a good shot stopper. And that's what Nick Pope is. 50 million that's being touted is an extortionate amount, but it's an extortionate amount that we're probably willing to pay. And I can't see any other goalkeeper unless we go to Onana. And I'll let Jamie do his little rendition in a minute of that new chant that we get through there. But it's the only players I can actually see us signing.
I still would go Onana personally, because I mean that's going to cost you 30 million. He's a very good goalkeeper. He's played in the Champions League. He's been at Ajax for a number of years already, and I think he's only like 25, 26. And he's a good goalkeeper, and you're not paying a lot of money for him, and it gives you funds to go out and spend the other problem areas we have, like centre back and left back. And we also need another midfielder to cover for Kante as well. So I don't see why we just don't go get Onana, because they've already agreed to let him go. They've already basically said 30 million is yours. So I don't understand why. Maybe they see a problem with him that I've not seen, but I think he's a good goalkeeper, and for 30 million, that's an absolute steal.
The issue I keep reading around is sort of quite a lot of goalkeepers from the continent that just can't handle the Premier League when they arrive. And that's what I think Chelsea are worried around, is having another failed experiment. Because if Onana doesn't work, that's in excess of 100 million that have been wasted on goalkeepers. Typically, the cheapest player that you would buy from all the positions on the pitch. And they've not worked out for us. I think where people are sort of touting someone like Nick Pope is that's £50 million that you could probably buy, and he's tried and tested, not necessarily in a top four club, but he's tried and tested as a good goalkeeper in the Premier League.
Well, you'd say, if you're playing in the Premier League for a lower team, then you're facing more shots. You're facing, the same players, but your defence in front of you realistically wouldn't be as good. Therefore, you're going to have more shots against you. And if you're saving the majority of them, then you're obviously good enough to go to a better team. And if you've got less shots coming at you, then you should really save a higher percentage. So, yeah, I can see the logic behind that. I think, Nick Pope's a good shout. I mean, 50 million, that's a lot for a Burnley goalkeeper, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm reading in the BBC transfer rumours at the moment. I think that number will be inflated, but I think sort of it's just it's another market that's been saturated off the fact that Liverpool can prove that if you invest in the right player, it can change your season and change how your squad plays. The next position is centre back. So I think sort of there are ongoing conversations with Chilwell. We've spoken around that a number of times. It's looking more positive in that space. I think equally Tagliafico would be a better signing in my eyes now. I think Chilwell's quite an inflated cost. From what I've seen, his head seemed to have dropped in the last part of last season, and I just don't see us spending that amount of money. But there seems like there's positive news there. The new person I've heard is Matthias Ginter from Borussia Mönchengladbach.
Perfect.
I love this.
I don't know why you.
I love this game.
That potentially is another centre back in the mix. I just don't know with the centre back situation. Koulibaly apparently is not looking great from a City perspective because they're still annoyed at Napoli based off Jorginho. But to your point, Matt, I don't even know whether if we go and sign a big centre back, whether we're just going to fix our problem.
Kante seems like you said earlier, Jamie. I think Kante is the person to get cover or someone who's going to replace in a couple of years' time. On the goalkeeper, I'm wary of English goalkeepers, not because of just English goalkeepers in general, but
what have they done to you, Matt?
Well, we haven't had one.
What did David Seaman ever do to you?
The 2002 World Cup has tarnished. It's the amount of pressure on an English goalkeeper that's considered to be number one or maybe in the running for number one. I think the worst thing that could possibly happen is they actually make it, because they're going to get about 5 friendlies and 1 competitive match, and then their confidence will be near on dead, and you will have to pick that player up. I don't think other countries have that the same way that we do in this country, because we love a bit of symbolism, and England's number one means way more than any other position on the pitch, even though it's definitely our weakest area. So
it's a great shout on that, because Kepa still is in the Spanish squad. I don't even know how he can't make it into the Chelsea squad. It's
like the other countries don't watch. They just don't watch the national games. They just go, well, he's really good. He was really good. He must still be really good. We'll just play him, and that'll be it. Whereas we will go, did he just palm that when he could have caught it? That's it. Oh, dead, over. So yeah. It might be a stupid reason, but I'd be worried Nick Pope goes to the Euros 2021 and, God forbid, is a human being and maybe knocks it out for a corner when it should have been a catch, and he gets hate mail and that all of a sudden flops to you. I can see that happening.
It's a great point, though, because Jordan Pickford made a big money signing to Everton, and it's not. He's just had critique after critique just because he's had quite a poor defence in front of him.